So when I saw you drive up in your truck, my curiosity went to what does he listen to in his truck? Like just the human part of Steve Austin. You're driving here or you're driving into town. Like what's on? What are you listening to?
Man, I'm not really listening to anything these days. I'm just kind of going down the road listening to silence.
You're a silence guy?
I really am. At this point, I don't think any of the radio stations work on that pickup truck. I've had that thing since it's brand new. Right now, as far as my gym selection goes, I've got everything from country just to metal. I've been really into Sepultura, which is old as hell, stuff like that. But I'm a big George Strait fan, and lately I just got turned on to Zach Top. He's kind of coming along.
He's like 26, but sounds like he's like 55.
I still think his voice is going to drop a little bit, but that kid can sure sing.
Yeah.
A guy named Joe Nickel just came through town, and me and my wife were going to go see him. And the concert started at 9, and so we got our tickets, and then it started getting closer to 9 o'clock. We're homebodies. So we gave our tickets to some friend of ours, but, Joe Nickel, I used to really listen to it a whole lot down there in South Texas when we had the Broken Skull Ranch down there. Kind of made a little bit of a comeback. He disappeared for a little bit, had some demons, but god dang, he was on fire for a minute. But I'm just pretty much standard country music and just a lot of hard rock.
You mentioned George Strait. Is that you're from Texas originally? If you're from Texas, you're kind of forced to love, and then you have that love naturally for George Strait because he's such a Texan. Is that why?
I don't know. I was a big Conway fan. Merle Haggard, George Jones, Randy Travis. Knocked it out of the park when he came out way back in the day.
So you're a real fan.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You have music in your family?
Well, my dad played in a country western dance band way back in the day. He sold insurance, but on Fridays and Saturdays they played gigs. My dad sang backup, sang a lot of the songs as well, kind of split them with the lead singer, but he was a lead guitarist. So I grew up with music and just grew up more into old school hip hop stuff and metal. And I wasn't so much a country fan until I got out on the road, and that's when I really turned into country. So I don't know what turned me on about George Strait, but I guess his talent speaks for itself, and he's stood the test of time, and he's done everything with such class and grace. You can't help but be a George Strait fan, especially if you're from Texas.
If your dad loved music, did that get passed down to you? Did you ever want to do music yourself?
Well, I did. I wanted to sing. Hell, I wanted to be a rock and roll star, but I don't have any musical genetics. My dad is actually my stepdad, so I didn't inherit any of his talent. I can't sing. I tried to play guitar. I didn't practice enough. I switched to bass. I didn't practice enough. So if you don't practice, you're never going to be good at anything. What I seemed to excel at was athletics. So I started working out with the 7th graders when I was in 5th grade down there in Edna. I was over standing on the side of the building, and my brother was in there training. And he goes, "Coach says, who's that kid over there?" And my brother Scott said, "That's my little brother." And the coach looked at me, instead of running me off, he goes, "You want to lift weights?" I said, "Yes, sir." So I started training, and athletics helped me find my way.
Were you a bigger kid?
Yeah,
Meaning, were you bigger than your other classmates?
Yeah, somewhat. And like compared to my brothers and my sister, I'm a little heavier framed, and for some reason I had a different structure than them. And we're all pretty much have the same mindset, got the same, genetics as far as everything goes, but for some reason, maybe it was the weights. But like I said, I started at 5th grade, and it's kind of been a love-hate thing that, you love to do it, but sometimes you just got to do it, so you hate it. But I've done it my whole life, so I still do it to this day.
Any of my friends that are extremely athletic, especially when they were in high school, they played every position. Like I would assume, because you have been an athlete your whole life, they had you running the ball, catching the ball. Is that true? Like especially in high school, did you play running back, I bet, or quarterback?
Yeah, I was running back, and I wasn't fast enough to run east or west, so I ran north
Straight
and
up,
south.
yeah.
And man, I'm lucky that I grew up 100 miles south of Houston, Texas, because if I'd have grown up in Houston, I'd have been sitting on the bench or playing a lot more linebacker. But being down there in South Texas, you can run a 4.9 40, and if you can run over people, you'll get the job done. So I was, all district, enough, good enough of a football player to get a junior college scholarship, and good enough after that to go to the next level to get another scholarship. And then I dropped out of college after my last year of eligibility ran out, and I stopped college at 17 years. It was 17 hours to graduate, and God dang it, broke my mom and dad's heart. But athletics helped pave the way for me to, get into college and get an education or whatever I got of one, and then get me into the wrestling business.
At what age did you tear? Because kickoff team, is that, I was reading like that's where you like tore an ACL, MCL, one of those. Where were you in your college career when that happened?
I was that was my junior year, my first year at North Texas State University there in Denton, Texas, running down on a kickoff coverage and hit my guy I was supposed to block. And man, I went down. I'd never felt anything like what I felt in my left knee. And I tore my ACL, but it was a mop end tear where you tear it in the middle and the edges are kind of frayed. That's why they call it a mop. But they can either repair it or not repair it based on the strength of my quads and my hamstrings. They didn't repair that knee. So anyway, subsequently, that's what led to all my knee issues down the road. And I've had the ACL, PCL put in there from cadaver ligaments several years ago. And, if I'm telling you like it is, and I will, I need a new left knee here pretty quick.
Would you go back and have that repaired now? Would you tell that kid to have it repaired and take a year off?
Absolutely, but I wasn't of that mindset, and if you got 2 years to play, and I didn't even think about doing a medical red shirt thing. I stayed down for the season, and then I rehabbed all during the summer, came back. And that was when I was playing linebacker. They switched me to weak side defensive end, which was an easier read for me. And, started all 11 games and then got on and started driving a forklift.
Now tell me what you think about me when I tell you this story. So I have some tendonitis in my foot here. It's been bothering me for
boy.
What?
Now here we go.
Listen, I respect his opinion. He's been through it all. So I have some tendonitis in my foot that goes up through here. I have a strained calf. I just did a whole couple days at the University of Arkansas playing basketball. I have 2 days of this festival I have to do. I just requested a wheelchair. Now, what do you think about that, Stone Cold?
How did it happen? Was this something that's been ongoing?
Yeah, well, the tendonitis for like 6 months. The strained calf has happened through like full court basketball. But I mean, like I literally just requested a wheelchair. Would you request a wheelchair for these minor injuries?
Oh, man. I'd give me a walking stick.
But a wheelchair is kind of cool.
Yeah, wheelchair. I'm going to get...
No, man, I use my walking stick.
Okay.
And I have one that I use every here and there, but man, I whatever you got to do, you got to do. Are you taking any anti-inflammatories or anything?
No, I don't. No, I just thought the wheelchair would do. No, I think about the actual things, like the healthy, productive things I could do. I just felt like I'd request a wheelchair to kind of get me around for a couple of days.
Every now and then, maybe you can get away with it, and it makes you. It's helping you get to where you need to go. I guess that's a good thing.
Yeah, see, I feel like that's an endorsement for the wheelchair.
Man,
we got there eventually.
I don't know, man. I'd probably be crawling on my way to that damn gate
instead of the wheelchair.
Yeah.
What do you do now that's fulfilling? Because for us, like I see on social media holding a chicken and stuff. Like I see like you doing little things around here. But like what now is exciting to you?
I do the chores around here. We live on 40 acres. We got horses, chickens, and a couple of dogs. The cats. My wife mainly takes care of all that stuff. Competitively, what I found lately is racing, side-by-sides, utility vehicles. I've been a brand ambassador for Kawasaki Motorsports since 2015 on the Mule division, the workhorse brand. And then I was filming a show last year that turned into a bomb. But I got a chance to, one of the producers asked me, hey, do you want to do a poker run? And I said, what the is a poker run? Because I don't play cards.
I was about to say the same question you just said. Yeah.
So a poker run, as it pertains to side-by-side racing, if you're going to run a course and say, I just got finished racing this past weekend, each lap was 55 miles out in the desert. So on that poker run, basically you're pre-running the course that you're going to run the next day and race. So on your GPS, you can mark all the dangers, what kind of turns you got, where you might need to check up, adjustments you need to make while you're driving. Now, during that ride where you're marking all your dangers, you're getting cards as you go. And so at the race drivers meeting the next, later that day, we do, hey, who won the poker hand? Who had the worst hand? It's kind of an entertainment. But that's how I found racing side-by-sides. And I've been doing it for about a year and a half, and I've absolutely fallen in love with it. And it's just so different from anything I've ever done because I've been driving, 4x4, four-wheel drive stuff, four-wheelers down when I lived in Georgia in the mud, hunting and side-by-sides, but just recreationally. And when you start racing something and pushing the machine to its limits and pushing yourself to your limits, which you don't know that you have yet because you've never driven at 100%, it takes a while to learn how to do that. So I equate it with when I first started wrestling, I sucked. And when I first started driving these things, I won't say I sucked, but I had a lot to learn. And the biggest mistake you make in pro wrestling is trying to do everything too fast. In racing, they'll tell you, and it didn't make sense to me until I ran a few races. In order to drive fast, you must first learn to drive slow. I mean, like when you was born, you started crawling, right?
No, I was actually balancing on one foot. I was pretty. I came out of the womb amazing. I was told.
But you don't come out and just start running.
That's true.
Same thing.
That is true.
Yeah, same thing with racing, but graduated a little faster.
So I don't understand the side by side. Do you have a partner with you, or is it always the same partner?
Yeah, my co-driver is a guy named Shane Kissman. They own the race team that I race with. When I was filming that show, they got into contact with these people, and they ride Kawasaki like I do. And because I won't get into anything else, and so anyway, I did the poker run with those guys, and I had so much fun. We were hauling ass out there, and I had so much fun. I said, "Man, I've got to do some more of this." And somehow, some way, out of the blue, Shane called me up, and he said, "Hey, man, do you think you'd really want to start racing side by sides?" And I said, "Hell yeah!" And so we built a car, and I started racing. And that's just by meeting people, and they asked me if I wanted to start racing. And I couldn't believe it took me this long to find, the sport that I found. At 58 last year, I was a Rookie of the Year in the Federation. So I was a Rookie of the Year when I started my wrestling career in 1990. So I think I was the oldest rookie to ever win that award. And I'm competing against, there's people my age, but there's also people that are half my age. One of my arch rivals last year was a 14-year-old girl. She could drive her ass off. So, when you're born out there and you get that DNA in you, man, them kids are fast. So it's fun, it's competitive, it gives me something to do.
Mr. Stone Cold, when you say co-driver,
is that what people call you, Mr. Stone Cold? That felt weird. I don't know. I'm just going to say that.
Just respect. I just didn't want to disrespect.
I think Mr. Austin would be more human, not Mr.
You're
Stone
right.
Cold.
You're right. I don't know why I said that.
Mr. Cold. What's the weirdest thing? Not to interrupt your question.
No, it's great.
But what is the weirdest thing people would call? Because I would never call you Mr. Stone Cold. I would say Mr. Austin or Steve.
God dang, Mike Tyson used to always call me Cold Stone.
like the creamery.
Motherfucker, that's the ice cream shop. My name is Stone Cold Steve Austin. And out there at the races, I go by Steve Austin. I never, if someone calls me Stone Cold, I'll answer to it. Mr. Stone Cold, I'll damn sure answer to it.
I love it.
Okay. Yeah, I've been living my life for a long time as Steve Austin.
Well, I love that you're from South Texas because I'm from South Texas. I'm from McAllen, Texas. And it's
cool. You're way down there.
Way down there. And you're from Edna. And I think it's awesome that when you're in South Texas, and maybe Bobby doesn't understand this, you think that everything's impossible. Everything on TV is impossible, which you probably got that too from being in a small town in Arkansas. But in South Texas, being a superstar, that seemed impossible. Was that impossible to you?
Man, I look at it now, and we were doing sitting in this very same shop, doing a biography for A&E, and man, I just told those people, I'm still Steve, the dude from Edna. But, I never would have figured, and I always wanted to be, after my rock and roll dreams got crushed because I can't sing, that wrestling was the next thing that I wanted to be. But you just never would figure, some kid from Edna is going to amount to a hill of beans, especially, when I finally got that call up to WWE. If you put all the superstars up against the wall and say, hey, man, pick the next big thing off that wall right there of all this talent, I'm going to be the last person you're going to select. Had a receding hairline, had a buzz cut when I walked in there. Nobody ever saw anything really for me. So to answer your question, I don't know. I guess it ain't where you're from. It's what you do with what you got, and you got to work your ass off in anything. So and you got to have some luck and some breaks along the way. So I guess I caught some lucks and some breaks, but I never figured that when I got into the business of wrestling, I just wanted to get in there because it looked cool on TV. I never knew what it could turn to. But had I been born in Los Angeles, I guess maybe the same would have happened. But I guess just because you're way down there in the tip of Texas, you just don't figure, much is going to happen other than hard work. And I always tell people, man, I'm lucky I found pro wrestling because I was built for manual labor. All I've ever done was haul hay, work on lease crews, drive forklift, load and unload trucks. I'm lucky I found what I found when I found it.
I grew up in rural Arkansas. We hauled a lot of hay, and there were two jobs. There was the person that ran behind the truck, and there was the person in the truck that stacked the hay. And I was thin and young, so I was doing a lot of stacking in the truck. You seem to have been genetically a little larger. Were you tossing the hay into the truck?
Man, we swap off. One guy riding that trailer for a little bit, another guy throw on, and then we just swap out and change.
I mean, that job sucked.
God dang, man. I don't know, the most I ever made hauling hay, and this is a lot of money back in the day, was 35 cents a bale. Man, you thought you was really making a ton of money when you was making 35 cents a bale.
And I'd always have hay like in my throat. Yeah. Like I would get back at night and I would be like a cat having a fur ball. Like the hay and the taste of hay never left.
One time we was out there hauling hay. It was hotter than hell in South Texas. You remember them Funyun onion rings?
Yeah. Remember them? I still get them at the gas station.
Oh, you still eat them?
Yeah, I still eat them.
God damn, you need to stop, man.
Yeah, that's still the hillbilly Arkansas way.
Well, back in the day, I was eating them things for lunch and just drinking shit tons of Gatorade. And after a while, you're supposed to wait 45 minutes after eating before you swim. Same thing with hauling hay. God damn, I got the worst stomach ache I've ever had in my life. And it didn't end up in a pretty fashion, and I'll leave it at that. Yeah.
Who was somebody who believed in you early, and you look back, and you go, I don't really see why they did it, but I'm so appreciative they did because it helped launch me into whatever it is that you feel great about now?
Man, that's a damn tough question. Who believed in me back in the day?
And I can vamp for a second. Like there's a guy that's with us now named Rod who, when I was doing one single radio show in one single market, he was like, yeah, I really feel like this is bigger than what it is. And I was like, I think this should be like a national, just way before the TV, way before radio. I was like, I want to help you. He was the first executive that ever flew in. And I thought somebody flying in to meet me, I was like, this is unbelievable. Somebody's going to spend money to come and have dinner with me. And so for me, that was that guy who I still am like, I don't know what he saw in me then, but had he not seen it then, I don't think I would be here now.
I there's been a few people like that, but now I got to go to probably a really good friend of mine from Oklahoma would have been Jim Ross. And he had been announcing all over the South. And finally he got the call up to go to New York to work for Vince McMahon. And he kind of saw me through all the weeds and figured, hey, man, this is a guy we might need to talk to based on what I was doing at that time. So I would say Jim Ross was a strong advocate for me back in the day and turned into a really close personal friend. But I would say his support helped me out a whole lot.
Before we started, you had asked if I get nervous when I do this. And I said, this is actually where I'm most comfortable. Put in the reps. I've messed up a lot, but I've also realized when I mess up a lot, it's never even that bad. So no really need to get that nervous. Like I've done the worst and got out. When did you get most nervous? Or when do you get, both questions, when's the most nervous you've been to perform? And then when do you get nervous now?
Back in the day, man, when I first started in Dallas, Texas, and they, after just a couple of months, they shipped me over to Tennessee where the bulk of the territory was based. And I'll never forget showing up to a little town, and Dutch Mantell was the booker. And the booker's the guy who's making all the storylines and making the matches. I showed up out of nowhere. I just got finished 2 months in Dallas, just came off a forklift, drove my little 1988 Hyundai Excel down there, and we're in some nondescript town in Tennessee, and there's a guy that works in a mask, and I was going in as a good guy, and Dutch Mantell says, go out there and give us about 8 or 10 minutes, and then whatever the finish was the finish. And I'm thinking as I'm walking to the ring, what the am I going to do for eight or 10 minutes? That's a lot of time. You do stand up, so
That's a lot of time.
And 8 or 10 minutes.
A lot of time.
Yeah, that's a pretty good amount of time to fill. when you don't know anything. So now if you told me, well, not now, but back in the day, if you told me 8 or 10 minutes, when I had, a couple of years in the business, say, what the am I going to do with that? I need 20 or 30. So getting nervous before matches way back in the day, or really before you have an identity and you don't know who and what you are, you haven't really honed or come up with a character. And you just go out there and try to do an interview, and you're talking from your throat. You're not using your diaphragm, and you don't know who or what the you are, and you're just trying to talk a bunch of trash like you heard everybody else. And maybe you're yelling because you've seen so many people yell. You figure that's the thing to do, rather than be kind of silent and articulate like Jake the Snake Roberts. Talking, you don't really know what is there to talk about. Who am I really involved with? So. These days, I think maybe right before we start a race, I wouldn't even call it nerves anymore. I call it an anticipation, because, man, I'm looking forward to seeing what I can do with that car. But other than that, there's not a whole lot to get nervous about.
I have a question about communication with an athlete while you're working with them. And my comparison is I did a dancing show once, and I was not good at it. But my partner would talk to me under her breath, with her lips closed the whole time, and she would say, okay, left or right. And I imagine when you're working with someone, there's a lot of that communication in the ring. Are you guys talking to each other? Or what is there a language that you use, or is it all just you can do it by feel?
That ventriloquist thing you just said, back in the day when I first started in the wrestling business, the way almost all sports have sped up, the wrestling business has sped up as well. So, back in the day, you were talking in the ring like a ventriloquist and calling the match as you go. You're doing something just to elicit a response, and based on that response that you get from the people, you keep going on and on and on. So, yeah, you're talking like a ventriloquist, and people talk about choreographing and setting up matches. I'll never forget the first time I worked with, the King, Jerry Lawler, who's one of my all-time favorites and one of the best. And I was pacing around the ring with him, and I'd had 2 weeks in the business. And Jerry was saying, all right, tackle, drop down, hip toss. And I said, huh?
Like a ventriloquist. He was saying it.
Yeah, tackle, drop down, hip toss. And there's about, 1,000 people out there. And I go, what? And this is before I invented the what. And he goes, tackle, drop down, hip toss. I said, what? God damn it, he called it one more time. And then I said, well, I did a tackle, drop down, and I didn't know who was supposed to hip toss who, and it was a cluster that ensued from there. And Jerry Lawler was booking the territory at the time, and I'm sure he was thinking to himself, why in the did I book this match with this punk kid? Anyway, yeah, that's how it's done. You've got to communicate. People used to think, oh, they're squeezing each other, or they're giving a signal by, how many times they. No, that ain't it. Yeah.
So either them and the communication is innate because of so much you've worked together, or you're still in some way communicating, talking.
Oh, yeah, man.
You ever have to extend a match? Because sometimes I'll be on TV.
Yeah.
Like I did American Idol, and they wouldn't be able to go to commercials. So for 4 years, they'd be like, stretch.
Yeah.
I'm on freaking national TV.
Yeah.
And they're telling me stretch out 51 seconds, which is an eternity. You ever have to do that last minute where they're like, we just got to call, go?
Oh, absolutely, man. The end of the match or the finish is called a go home. And so a lot of times, the referee is the one keeping time. And so, or he's getting a time cue from somebody. And you might think, okay, as you go out to TV, you and your guy have 15 minutes. All of a sudden, something happens and you have 6 minutes. So now you have to make a long story or a 15-minute story or a 6-minute story. Or, hey, man, the cameras are down, we're in a commercial break. So you've got to adjust there. No matter what they say, you just do it on the fly. And these days, if you watch those cats, they're so good. Talent in the ring has to be able to improvise, adapt, and overcome. And so that's what you learn to do. You think on your feet, and you just become a jack of all trades, whether it's, buying time, whatever you got to do to make everything work. That's what you do.
Mr. Steve Austin, was there a specific time? Better,
yeah.
Thank you. I was working on it. I was thinking how I'm going to do that. Yeah. Was there a specific time in your career or your life when you realized, like, oh, wow, I'm getting famous. Like, this is it. It's happening.
And do you notice it immediately? Because a lot of the artist friends that we have, they're on the road so much
Yeah.
that they will not notice it because they're constantly moving.
Interesting. I started in Dallas, and then I went to Tennessee, and then I went to, I was living in Nashville, and then I got hired by Dusty Rhodes to work for World Championship Wrestling in Atlanta. Ravishing Rick Rude had just come into Atlanta, and we hooked up almost immediately and became very good friends. So I would travel with Ravishing Rick Rude. Rude had just come off his run with in WWF, and everybody who watched wrestling knew who that guy was.
I dance like him. I would watch him and I would dance like him. Yeah.
So
that's what I would do. I'd be like 8 and I would be doing this.
we would go down the road, stop at a Denny's, a Cracker Barrel, or whatever, our usual stops, and everybody knew who he was, and maybe one out of every 15 that knew him knew who I was. And so when you're sitting there in somebody's shadow and it's a competitive industry, and you say, God damn, what does it take to get some recognition? So it's an interesting thing to deal with. I forgot the question you asked me.
When did you notice?
So when I don't know about being famous, but when I started noticing that people were starting to finally gravitate towards me, when I started off in Dallas, I'm just a punk. I went to USWA, where Dutch Mantell gave me the Stunning Steve Austin name. He gave me the Steve Austin name. And I was starting to gain traction. And then when I went to WCW, as Stunning Steve, that was okay. But when I went to WWF and I became Stone Cold, and we were in Chicago, and man, it was a tag match, and I can't even remember who I was tagging with or against. But for some reason, Chicago's always been a stronghold for me. And every time I got in that damn ring, and people would come alive. And that was when I really got a sense of, hey, man, I'm gaining traction. People know who and what I am, and they're starting to get with me. So that's when on an internal sense, as far as the business, I never really, after not getting recognized by people traveling with Rick Rude, didn't pay any attention to that.
You mentioned before we came on you didn't have the gift of gab. I think your podcast is great. I think you seem like a natural at it. Do you feel like you were a natural when you started? Because you're compelling when you speak. You say things that make me want to listen. What have you learned while interviewing other people, and how do you feel like you've developed as a question asker?
Well, man, I stopped podcasting in 2020 when COVID hit. I kind of had some disagreements with the people that I was doing the podcast with, and man, I'm a real easy guy I'm zero maintenance. Just let me do my thing, and I'm good. But anyway, so we stopped doing that. But when I first started doing the Podcast One gave me a call, or my agent, and they wanted to know if I wanted to do a podcast. And I was already thinking about it, but I didn't know how to get in on the technology level. And I said, well, shit, yeah. So we had a meeting, and I started. And so at the time, I started, using a little recorder y'all got over there and going out and just two microphones, doing my own thing. But the first time when I started, we was in a glass building. All the walls are glass. You can see everybody in all the other cubicles. And here I am, boy, this is Stone Cold Steve Austin. He's starting a podcast. This guy can talk. And he's just going to be a natural. I didn't make any notes. I didn't research nothing. I didn't do shit. I started talking, hey, welcome to the Steve Austin Show, blah, blah, blah. Hit the wall in 8 minutes. And all the producers are in the room, because there's pressure, right? All these producers think, oh, this guy's going to be a fucking natural. I hit the wall in 8 minutes, and boy, I tucked my tail and went home and realized that, boy, you better get your together if you're going to start doing a podcast. And that's when I started researching and doing whatever I had to do to get the job done. And I was rougher than in the beginning, as you know. You step on people.
I'm still there. Yeah.
You step on people, or you just you talk too much. You're there to talk to your guests, so let your guests talk, and don't try to get all your shit in. People done seen all your stuff. We're here to talk about them. So it was. I don't do it anymore. I've actually thought about starting a small show up again, just maybe a 30-minute version of the things that go on here around the ranch and with my racing career. But I sucked at it, to tell you the truth. And I figure I got a little bit of a speech impediment. I'm not the most seamless flowing talker. I'll stutter and make my way around words, but that's the way I've always talked. So it worked okay for me.
I was watching some clips of the podcast. I mean, they're still up. And Tom Brady wasn't good his first game a couple weeks ago. He came back week 2, was much better. Like a guy that went in, you could tell the reason why he was great at what he did is because he took notes of him not being so great week 1 and came back and was super strong week 2. And so I watched like 2 or 3 of your old podcasts that are up now. And I was like, God dang, like you could have done this, but it's funny to hear you talk about how you weren't good at the beginning and then you dedicated yourself to being better. Did a lot of that translate into how you wrestled as well? Would you go back and go out, maybe that match wasn't good early, and go, this is what I could have done better? Or was it all just you had to get in the ring to do it?
Yeah, you got to get in the ring and do it. We used to, one of the guys I used to travel with is one of my closest friends, Diamond Dallas Page. He was ahead of his time as far as taking care of his body, and he videotaped all his matches. And I'd be over doing color commentary, while who's in the ring working. And then sure enough, we'd get to some shit box motel, and we'd hook the VCR thing up to the TV so we could watch his match. And say, hey, man, no, don't do this right here. Do this then, or do it like this. So we start critiquing all of his matches. So same thing, man. It's reps in anything, just like with racing these side by sides. It's reps. You got to do anything, whatever it is you're trying to do. You got to do it over and over and over again to make improvements, and you know that.
Are you feeling fulfilled in your competitive spirit by racing now from what you were getting from football and then professional wrestling? Like, is it the same feeling of fulfillment?
I would compare it more to football rather than wrestling, just because in wrestling you're in front of such massive crowds, which meant I've been in front of crowds of 25 people, and shit hurts a lot more when there ain't nobody there.
Adrenaline's not up as high?
Adrenaline ain't near as high. Just give me a good swift kick in the ass before I hit the damn door and make my entrance. Man, the adrenaline factor is a whole different thing because, man, when that glass broke, when they wrote that music for me, they couldn't have wrote a better piece of music for Stone Cold Steve Austin. When that glass breaks, you could be dragged out for being on the road, because we used to live on the road like a lot of the artists you talk to. It's a way of life, and shit happens, and sometimes you're down, and when that glass breaks and that crowd goes through the roof, it's an adrenaline spike that if you've never felt it, there's no way I could put it into words to explain it to you enough. But this racing thing is more like football because of just I just want to compete at something, and I want to win. And God damn it, I ain't going to win all the time. Hell, I broke down. We had a race a couple of weeks ago. It was a 555-mile race, and I broke down at mile marker 100 and had to pull out of the race, and that sucked ass because I was on about a four-race winning streak in my federation that I run in. And so it's nice when you experience those highs. And then, it's like anybody can learn how to win. It's those losses that kick you in the ass and kind of ground you and say, okay, the lows come with the highs and the highs go with the lows. So racing it really gives me a lot of satisfaction, a lot of fulfillment. And I never knew this, but last year when I started racing, we're running basically on just rough ass, roads out here in the desert on a 2-track road. And we'd be going straight down the road, and there's rocks and turns, and it's rougher than hell out there. And hell, I just veer off the fucking road and end up in the sagebrush. Well, my co-driver's been racing his whole life, and he's calm, cool, and collected. And I'd gather my shit together and get on the road and say, hey, man, sorry about that. We're wired for sound so we can talk to each other. And what had happened was I was thinking, hey, man, what the fuck? What am I drinking tonight? Am I going to have a beer? Am I going to drink whiskey or whatever? As soon as my mind left the task at hand, which is navigating, through that desert, and it happened about 3 or 4 times that first season, and racing has taught me to be laser focused, because as soon as you take your mind off what you're doing, you will fuck up. And that's one of the things I enjoy about it as well. Like the world can be in a pile of shit right now, but if I'm in that race buggy in a race, it can wait because I'm dealing with what I got to deal with and trying to get across that finish line before the other guys.
Do you ever drink wine?
Oh, yeah, I love wine.
Or people were like, why are you drinking wine? You're Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, you should only drink beer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm a well-rounded drinker.
I think I would just be like,
Good answer.
Chardonnay, are you sure, Mr. Austin?
God damn it! I've been around for so long now. I'll make a post on Instagram and say, "Oh man, you better watch your liver. You've been drinking." Like, motherfucker, I take care of myself. I ran hard when I was in the wrestling game. I ran hard and I ran fast. It's just the way I lived. I won't speak about anybody else. But, I love wine. I love my beer. I've been in the beer business with El Segundo Brewing Company since 2015, and I love a good bourbon.
Yeah, just if I were a waiter. Are you sure?
They bring him a beer anyway.
Chardonnay? We're gonna accompany
Wine
that.
is good,
Yeah.
man. Wine is good after a race when you've had a couple of beers, and this is that final drink before you hit the hay.
Zima.
With a Jolly
You
Rancher.
remember Zima?
You remember that?
Give him a
man.
Zima. Yeah.
That was a thing when it first came out.
Oh, yeah.
Are they still around?
I don't know.
I don't.
We don't know.
I hope not.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
You were in a few movies with Adam Sandler. What was he like?
I always tell people that's the nicest guy I ever met in Hollywood. And I didn't do Hollywood. I lived in Marina Del Rey in the Venice area. So I didn't go to parties. I didn't go to the Hollywood Hills. I didn't do none of that shit. It wasn't my scene. I was an athlete. We were talking early before we started rolling cameras, and we started talking about the artistry of some of the guys that you've interviewed. But man, those actors are a little different, and I don't mean it in a bad way. I just mean they're different than an athlete. They're wired different, or I'm wired differently than they are. Adam Sandler was the funniest, nicest guy I've ever worked with, and I've enjoyed each time I've gotten to work with him. He's a super guy, a sweetheart.
I'm not going to mention any names. I don't expect you to either. But there are times in my career and profession I have to work with people I don't enjoy working with. It's just part of what we do. But you got to fake it. I feel, especially if it's like, hey, boss will be like, I need you to have this person on the show. He doesn't often do that, but I'm like, I don't really like them, but I'm going to bring them in. I'm going to work with them. We're going to make it work. For me, that's difficult, but I can fake it. What is it like having to do a job so intimate and you just don't like the person you're working with and you're wrestling with them?
Those were so few and far between. I always got along with pretty much everybody, and you could go talk to anybody that's ever worked with me, and maybe they might have a different opinion, but I've seen some guys that were outstanding workers, but they were kind of at odds with each other, and when they got in the ring, it didn't click because there was some animosity. But for some reason, I've always gotten along with just about damn near everybody I've ever worked with. Now, there are some guys whose style is so different that you knew it was going to be a difficult task.
Meaning you still like them as humans.
Oh, yeah.
Because they were stylistically so different.
Yeah. But, yeah, and there was very few people that I disliked.
Who in your career, and I'll tell you why I asked this. I remember, and if I'm wrong on the facts, please correct me. I remember WCW, you were still Stunning Steve, and when I was really young, I loved Ricky the Dragon Steamboat.
Awesome.
I hear he was a really great guy too. Never met him, and he was maybe the U.S. champion. He had the belt, but his back hurt. I don't know if it was real or not, and he had to give you the belt, and so he was like, I can't wrestle, so you got the belt as Stunning Steve, and I remember thinking, man, that would be so cool to be in the ring with Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. Aside from whatever storyline there was then, who were those guys? And one could have been Ricky Steamboat. Who were those guys when you came up and the first time you got to actually professionally be a peer that you were like, this is freaking awesome?
Well, I was wrestling with Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, and I think I was in the turnbuckle, and he was on the second rope, and he was punching me, and I pushed him off, and he landed on his back. I believe that was how he got one of his bad back injuries. And Ricky the Dragon Steamboat was awesome, probably one of the best ever for sure. What was the question?
Who did you get to work with where you're like, this is, you were young, but you're like, this is sick that I get to be in the ring with this person I looked up to?
Well, Ric Flair, because people kind of saw me as maybe being the next Ric Flair, because I was modeling, this before I had my neck injury down in WCW, I was kind of modeling my style after Rick, because to me, he had the ultimate pro wrestling style. And I'll never forget, we were at a TV taping down there in South Carolina or somewhere like that, and it was me, Rick, and somebody against three other guys, and I'm thinking, man, I'm going to show this motherfucker what's up. And all of a sudden, Rick tags in, and I see him go to work. And of course, I'm a lifelong fan. And when you're standing on the apron and you're watching a guy, and that was an 18 by 18 ring in WCW. But all of a sudden, when you're watching the man do his thing, you're like, F this. I got a long way to go. But it was awesome to be in the ring with him because it was like, as a heads up call, like, okay, man, this is kind of, you need to step up your game a whole lot more than you thought you did. And I would never say that I ever reached Ric Flair status in the ring at all because I consider him the GOAT. But working with a guy like that, even working with Ravishing Rick Rude, but working with any of those guys that had any names was always fun to me. But also, yeah, I really didn't look at it like that way. After a few years in the business, or even after a few months in the business, you're just thinking, okay, man, these guys are just like me. They might be more well known, but it's not a big deal.
Final 3 questions. What is your favorite picture in your house right now? It's just a personal picture, but it's in the living room, and it really gives you just a fond memory of something special.
Well, my daughter had a couple flies hanging around here. my daughter had a picture painted of my dog Hershey. She has this wonderful artist friend of hers. It's in my closet on the left-hand side. And me and Hershey, she was a chocolate lab, and we were just, I bought that dog off my hunting partner in South Texas. I met that dog when she was 6 months old. Next year I went down there. She was a year old, and I'd recruited my wife. That's what I was working on. I was dating my wife. I'd rented a Class C camper down there and was staying out there. And, you know, Kristen, my wife, she's vegetarian. That's the first vegetarian I ever met in my life. I don't know how they lived. Anyway, she met Hershey, and I told her about this dog. And so while I was out hunting, she would text me. She goes, "Hey, do you mind if I feed Hershey some chicken or what?" I said, "No, go ahead." So anyway, we were sitting at the airport, fixing to fly back to L.A. from South Texas, there in San Antonio Airport. And we were sitting there drinking a Bloody Mary. And I told my wife, I said, "Man, we can't leave that dog behind." I said, "We got to buy it." And I called my buddy Trey, who's a car salesman, and he got top dollar off that dog. And I drove down there. I flew down there, and I was going to get a rent-a-car. And I'm a very frugal person, so I was going to get a one-way car, and it was going to be a Monte Carlo, because that was the best deal I could find. And of course, you know, they didn't have any Monte Carlo, so they upgraded me to Lincoln Continental. And so me and Hershey, after I flew down there, got a ride down to the ranch. Paid my buddy for the dog, and me and Hershey rode in a Lincoln Continental all the way back to Los Angeles. And that picture of Hershey in my closet is one of my favorites, one of my most favorites in the house.
It's awesome.
Are you still going hard in the gym?
Yes. Yes, I trained this morning. I completely changed my workout. It's more for like a racing type workout. But man, I'll do Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I do a full body workout. I pick one exercise per body part, and I'll make 4 to 6 circuits. Those first 2 are warm-ups. They each get heavier, and I'm always in the first 20 reps, 15, and then 10s, and then 2 to failure. But I can. If you want to go right now, I'll show you what's up.
No.
Yeah.
We don't. I gotta be in a wheelchair. I gotta be in a wheelchair. I would. If it wasn't for the wheelchair, I'd be like, "Let's go."
No, you know, I'm out there. I'm competing with all these damn kids out there. You know, now we're just driving race cars. I mean, side by sides. But man, I'll sit in my sauna. I'll do my 30 minutes cardio every morning. I'll stretch. I do mobility things. When you're young and you're going through all the stuff, people say mobility. You think, "What the f- is that?"
Stretching, feet together.
These
down,
days,
like, okay.
I get it. Yeah, mobility.
What about
Now
that
I
cold
do.
plunge? You do cold plunge?
I got that thing over there. Yeah, I did my first post. Man, I didn't know you were supposed to just jump in there. And I just kind of started immersing myself in there slowly, and that ain't what's up.
No, because the nuts are when you go, ooh, and you
Yeah.
kind of get. I mean, that's what.
Yeah.
Honestly, because I.
Yeah. Just
have to.
drop down, dunk your head, and just sit there and then start your breathing routine. That's the best way to do it.
Because it's hard to acclimate for me, maybe not for you. It's hard to acclimate your junk into it, because that's when you start to go, I can't go any further.
That's why you just got to jump in.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I don't do it.
Yeah.
I don't do that. Final question. What are you most proud of? And I want a professional and a personal answer.
Man, on a professional level, I don't know. I guess being able to succeed in a business, which, like I said, if you'd put me on a lineup, you would never pick me to be worth a hill of beans. So professionally, and in the world of professional wrestling, on a personal level, it took me a while to find my wife, but me and my wife have been together now for 20 years. And I think we got married in '09. And just on a personal level, man, my wife makes me so much better than I am. And she, I'd been married 3 times before and never wanted to get married again. And I found my wife, and she had never been married. So, of course, she wanted to get married. And I was almost like, well, this is crossroads because I don't really want to go there. And then I'm glad I did, because my wife is a former special education teacher, and her students love her. Anytime we're ever back in L.A., if we're at like a Home Depot or the grocery store, one of her kids, recognize her, they just love her. So I think the fact that she's such a great communicator, I think that's one of the things it takes to be a special education teacher, amongst many other qualities. But I'm very proud of my relationship with my wife. It took me a long time to find her. She's my soulmate, and we'll be together until it's over.
Thank you for being so generous with your time. We're massive fans, and I don't know, it's been super cool for me.
It's been amazing.
I hope this wasn't total annoying for you, and I'm going to edit you saying I should be in a wheelchair, because we have that ability now. I'm going to be like, yeah, I would be in a wheelchair, and I'm stone cold. That's what it's going to say when I'm done.
Yeah.
So as long as you're cool with that, we're good.
Man, I was sorry to hear you guys have travel problems coming in here because of the fog.
We made it though.
We hitchhiked.
And then I think my publicist said something that, hey man, Steve's a time fanatic. Don't be late.
I'm also a time fanatic, and I literally said to my guys, we're here, but we're canceling because I will not show up and be disrespectful.
He'd rather cancel than be late.
I was going to rather be canceled.
Really?
Yeah.
Than show up and be like, hey, we just disrespected you by making you wait on us. So that was what I told them. We're canceling
now that was our side of it. What would you have thought if we were, an hour?
I would have been mad if you canceled it, because I already set aside part of my day for you. And so just because you got late due to factors which were beyond your control, when that guy's flying that jet, you back there as a passenger,
I want him to go.
And they say, hey man, we can't land. I don't expect you to go strong arm that pilot and say, hey mother. Get out of here. And then you commence to land in the airplane. So,
but if you would have been awesome.
I might have done that.
Yeah, that's right.
So I can understand. Yeah, I understand that. But I remember when we used to live in L.A., of course, my wife is from L.A., and she knows that city. I don't know how she does it. As soon as we moved into this town, she knew this town like the back of her hand. I'm still struggling. There's only 10,000 motherfuckers that live here. So anywhere on the streets of L.A., I used to, this is way back before the technology days of the iPhone. I had a Garmin on my windshield. And man, I'd be going to a meeting. I said, God damn, I called my wife, Kristen. I said, Garmin's telling me to hang a ride on this street. She said, no, go do this. She'd give me the back route. But anyway, a lot of times I'd go to a meeting, and she goes, well, your meeting's at 9 a.m. tomorrow. What time you leaving? 7:45. And she goes, it's only 2 miles away. You're going to be there way too early. And I said, I don't care. I'll sit on the side of the road and send emails or do something to kill time, but I will not walk into a meeting late. So that's kind of one of my things. I've always been, even going to the buildings, we're always supposed to be, back in the wrestling days, you're always supposed to be there at least an hour before. So they got something to, they know what they're working with, the card's subject to change, right? But I was that guy, especially when I got a chance to start main eventing. But I was always the first guy to the building, and then later on, the last guy leaving the building.
I think successful people that do the big things right have to do the little things right in order to even have a chance to do the big things. And the little things are showing up on time, having a good attitude, being respectful. And so thank you very much for allowing us to, because I told the pilot, you land this thing right now, or I'll do it for you. He didn't.
It didn't work.
So
was that from the seat of your wheelchair?
All right, we're done.
Thank you, Mr. Austin.
Thank you, Mr. Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Yes, sir. Thank you.